My name's Dom, you can call me Domble. This is Seshcap, Session 0. What Seshcap is it is a long form, bit of a ramble that I'm going to be doing.
This video specifically isn't going to be about a session recap of my campaign, but rather preparing for the campaign and a little bit about the campaign in general.
I want to talk about this campaign that I'm running specifically because it's a campaign that I haven't really done much of. It's a fully homebrew campaign with the Pathfinder 2 rules. I am a Diploma of Film and TV student through TAFE at the moment. This channel is partly so that I can make stuff and just get good, practice things like lighting. So what is my experience with RPGs in general? I started with, believe it or not, D&D 4th edition, which was back in 2010. I was 13, picked up a rulebook, started playing with my mates, so that's about 11 years that I've been playing RPGs now. Played a bit of 4th edition. I ran one campaign almost to the end, and by that I mean we got to level 4. The way we mostly played though was just one-shots. It would just be, hey, I made a dungeon. And Pathfinder 1st edition, because anyone that's heard of D&D at that time had also heard of Pathfinder and how it's better and more like the older editions. And I'd say it probably was. But there's always a special place in my heart for my 1st edition, or my 4th edition rather. I dabbled a little bit with 5th edition when it came out. Wasn't a massive fan of it. I did end up running a West Marches campaign that lasted maybe 4 months and featured 15 players coming and going. I ran Unknown Armies 2nd edition for a couple of months. The longest thing I ran consecutively would have to be Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition. Ran that for about 9 months. That was fully homebrew and also fully improvised. I would build stats for recurring villains, gave them motivations, and that was it. That was a nutty campaign. That had 12 players, of which up to 11 at a time would show up. Which was wild, but it was super fun. It was, alternate timeline Brisbane, and because it was superheroes, it meant that it's like, oh, you want to be a psychic? Go ahead. You want to be currently building a hotel on the other side of Australia on other people's terms? You're fast enough, you can be doing that, which also meant that it was impossible to plan for. I have also had a lot of great experience with Pathfinder's adventure paths. Currently also playing the Final Fight games, Star Wars. But why I wanted to talk about this campaign specifically is this was the first campaign that wasn't either completely improv, like my Mutants and Masterminds campaign was, completely randomly generated player-driven story like the West Marches campaign I ran was, and wasn't completely pre-written by somebody else like the adventure paths that I've run were. What I found at the moment as someone who has no job and is studying TAFE full-time, but only 3 days a week, is that I have time on my hands. And my girlfriend really wanted to get into the game. She said, I'm not even going to be able to think about playing weekly for at least another month, so I said, cool. I have a month to come up with the campaign to introduce her to the game. It's Pathfinder 2nd edition, which I have a smattering of experience with, a total to about 5 sessions, but I have just completely fallen in love with it. It does bounded accuracy in a way that doesn't feel like there's no point in building your character because your numerical bonuses still very much matter. It's tactical, it fixes the classic D&D problem of casters versus marshals, and it has that tight balance that 1st edition was missing, but has all of the options and character customization that 5th edition just simply didn't have. The players were my girlfriend, complete newbie, my roommate who had been introduced to tabletop last year and took to like a duck like water, but not crazy experience with this system. My best mate who just got into D&D with me at the same time as I did, but he played way more than me, but only Pathfinder, did not really play any other game, is now running a Star Wars game. And another mate who has also played a crazy amount of Pathfinder First Edition, like proper dug into that system, and is the most experienced of us at Second Edition. He's into book 3 of Extinction Curse that he's running. We had a good mix of experience, but overall there was only one other person who knew Second Edition that well. And I didn't even know it that well. I had to look up a lot of rules, and there's a lot of asking him for rules at the table. Hot tip. Hot tip. If there is someone who knows the rules better than you do at the table, don't be afraid to just be like, hey, do you know this rule? No? Cool. Can you look it up while we continue? That easy. Delegate, delegate your work. So, because we had a wide range of experiences when it comes to D&D and Pathfinder in general, but not a crazy amount with the Second Edition specifically, I figured this was a perfect learning campaign where players could literally go to classes and learn about the mechanics of their class. We were playing with the variant rule of the free archetype, which meant that you essentially got a second subclass to go with your main class. For instance, one of the characters majored in witchcraft, being a witch, but minored in alchemy. What that meant is that I could say, cool, each of those classes has 2 student NPCs and the teacher NPC, and I can build the campaign around that framework to perfectly get all the characters involved and also teach people about how Second Edition works. And what that would come down to is each class would be how I give out loot. That's one of my main struggles, and I knew this about homebrew campaigns, was when and how to give out loot. Yeah, the bad guy has a magic sword and then when you kill him you take it, but sometimes that doesn't feel great. And the way Second Edition's built, unless you're using automatic bonus progression, is you need to give out a shitload of loot, like between consumables and permanent items, and the pace that I wanted it to go at, which was 2 to 3 sessions per class level, per level up, meant I needed to be giving out 5 to 6 items per session, and I didn't want it to just be, oh, and you stumble onto a big, room full of someone else's stuff that you just take. So that doesn't make sense if you're at a school. It didn't make sense for their characters to just burst into someone's room and say, hey, listen, we had an argument earlier, I'm just gonna take all your shit. Not how these characters were gonna play. Because part of how I was playing this was I needed everybody's characters a little bit in advance so I could build it around them. That's the beauty of a homebrew campaign. If I wasn't going to build the campaign around my players, why not run something pre-written and save myself so much hassle? If I'm making it up anyway, might as well make it up in a way that's going to resonate with them. And that's something that I thought a lot about, is, as a player as well, is when you make a specific type of character, you're signaling to the GM that this is what you want to see in the game. If I play a cavalier, I want there to be big open plains where I can charge people. I want there to be large groups of enemies that me and my teammates can use tactics to avoid, and that way I can be that battlefield commander. That doesn't work in a campaign where everything is set on one boat. Another big part of how I knew I was going to build the campaign was I wanted to have a structure, and that meant having an overarching villain that I'm aware of from the very beginning, because all the bad things that happen in the campaign turn out to be this one dude, and I wanted that to make sense. I didn't want it to be a retcon, because players pick up on that. Obviously, on my list for Harry Potter villains, the Lich. Voldemort's a Lich. That's gotta be in there somewhere. Gotta hit those Harry Potter tropes. I knew that there were gonna be werewolves in it. I knew that there was going to be a teacher that seems shady but is actually an alright dude. Is he? But he's actually kind of shady. You're not really sure about that. And I knew that there were going to be houses, and I wanted there to be something to do with every single house, because I wanted the first session to be a sorting ceremony where I don't know which house they're going to go into. But it did mean that there were certain things that I knew not to bother prepping until it came up. But I didn't want it to be just straight Harry Potter. I didn't want it to be exactly that. Thought about making the principal a villain, but then I also wanted the principal to be all-powerful politically, the same way that Dumbledore is, because my principal says Dumbledore. All principals are Dumbledore. Principal Vagina and Rick and Morty. He's Dumbledore. Name a principal. They're just Dumbledore, honestly. What that meant was, well, if I'm trying to make the school itself a character, because that's the key to any good setting, the setting itself is a character, like New York in John Wick, Broadway is in Birdman, like any good setting basically is another character. So I thought, why isn't the school the villain? The house, the castle that they're in. And then I remembered a piece of Unknown Armies lore. Unknown Armies, it's a percentile-based game where it's modern dark fantasy with lots of Lovecraftian elements. Insanely good system. Highly recommend their 3rd edition's version of Crafting a Session Zero. And there's a piece of Unknown Armies lore, which is the House of Renunciation, where it is another very small plane of existence that is a house. Any person that enters that house, there is a room for that person. And what you see in that room is completely independent to that one person. And whatever it is the one thing that makes that person flick a switch. They become the complete opposite of who they were. Strangely enough, the only thing in common with all of these is that a large number of them start serving the House of Renunciation. Is the House of Renunciation biased to only getting people that, once it converts, it will try to bring other people in to convert them? Or is there something about what it does? Who knows? But what we do know about the House of Renunciation is that it doesn't live to cause people to renounce, because it's not a living being, it's a house. But that is its purpose. It causes people to change. And I thought, what if that was the villain? What if Hogwarts wanted to change you, not for the better, just for the different? The exact opposite, the exact different. Which meant that I could go, well, then I can really get into these characters' psyches. So why is it a school? People go to school to change, obviously. So maybe the principal went and he tamed it, and now the House of Renunciation is waking up. And there are people that want it to wake up, and the kids have to stop them. Done. That's your 5-second pitch. The school is a monster house. It's waking up. Kids have to stop it waking up. Perfect. Perfect little... From there, I continued to steal, because that's all art is stealing ideas and mashing them together till they work. It's a formula for making your own homebrew campaign, because I didn't have that much experience with a structured homebrew campaign. What it said was you start with your villain, done. You have your setting, school, both in one, easy. Then you have a villain for level 7, level 5, and level 3. Once you have those, you can fill in the gaps. So for level 7, my initial thought was, it's the whole house. It's the whole House of Renunciation. That doesn't make any sense to me. What I knew though is I wanted each of those houses to have a villain associated with them that would all come back at level 7 for a big, here's all the bad guys from before, and you know them all and you know what they're going to try and do. Because of the scaling for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, means that you can have what was previously a full boss at level 3, now just be one of the mooks at level 7. Then I also realized that if level 7 is the house when it's awake, I want them to be a genuine chance to stop it at level 5. One of my players had already said that they wanted to play an Oracle. Oracles in 2nd edition are defined by the fact that they have a curse. I thought, cool, what would this teacher's involvement in waking up the school be? If you have an uncurable curse, maybe you take your chances with the House of Renunciation. Maybe it cures the curse. Maybe it makes the curse into something more manageable. If you have an awful, awful curse, like this character who, let's say, I'm going to base it off one of my recurring nightmares, has barnacles growing out of his skin that breathe and open up to your flesh, and he's some kind of sea oracle, and salt water comes out of it, so he's constantly got salt water going back into his arms. You know that thing where you really hate holes in like skin? I don't quite have it, but I very much vibe with it. Yeah, I'd take the personality change to get rid of that. Cool, so he's driving, trying to wake up the house. I also knew that I wanted to have a Quidditch. A good school has a good sporting team, and I wanted to encourage players to not just be wizards and things. It's an adventuring academy. It's, you know, it's got fighters, it's got monks. So I wanted there to be a strong reason to be a marshal, because I knew that people would trend caster, just because of the theme of the campaign. So I thought, cool, what if the Quidditch coach is in on it? That means that we can have part of the ritual is they have an important object for the ritual that they have to get through like a rift or something, and boom, all of a sudden you're playing Quidditch, and the stakes aren't just high because a Dementor's there. The stakes are high because a Dementor's on a broom and he's trying to get past you, and you have to hit him with a bludgeon. Didn't end up playing actual Quidditch. I made my own game, but again, I'm going to get to that in the session where I actually used it. Cool, so I have my level 5 and I have my level 3, and I knew that for level 7, that would be the house is already woken up. If we're at that point, they've failed to defeat the Oracle teacher from waking it up. So what's the house doing? It's changing people. It's making them renounce and turning them into other things. It has a bevy of servants that have all renounced their former ways and completely changed who they are. So I could have the final boss be something changed into a powerful servant of the house that they need to defeat to stop the house. I knew I wanted to get a Lich in there somewhere. Too much for level 7? Maybe. The Lich is a level 11 or 12 creature. So yeah, very much too much. Some people like their final boss to have an element of we could legitimately all die here and fail the campaign. I like that, and I'm not scared of player death in any way, but we don't want it to be that bad. So maybe it's they're resurrecting the Lich. Maybe the entire House of Renunciation is its phylactery. The way that 2nd edition works compared to Pathfinder 1 and 5e is they really regimented the differences between types of magic. They call it traditions. So there is primal magic for your nature, your druids, your ranges and that kind of thing. Arcane for your wizards and basically just wizards at the moment. With sorcerers and witches can do it, but they can also do all the other types. Divine for your gods, your clerics, your champions or paladins or whatever you call them now. Occult for your bards and culty, like esoteric, I don't want to say villainous, but villainous magic, which is your kind of fringe magic. And then 5th house is martial, which is no magic, because I'm doing an adventuring academy, not everyone's magic. Cool, so that's my structure. Then there's a bunch of other stuff that Reddit post goes into, like environments and all of that, but which I did go over and I knew I would get to, but that was the main thing. Then I just needed ways to get to it. And that was kind of the big outline that I had.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for listening to me ramble on. It's really a lot of fun to record these. And like I said, I'm really using these to just try and get better at making stuff. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, drop a like and subscribe. I am not going to try and commit myself to any kind of schedule with these videos because, let's face it, we all know that's going to be a lie. I have a couple other videos out on the channel already. Most of them are Pathfinder 1 related. In fact, I think all of them are. I've really fallen in love with Pathfinder 2, but that doesn't mean that Pathfinder 1 is not still my baby, so there'll be more of that soon. I also really want to make a video specifically on building encounters in 2nd edition, because it's something I'm really passionate about and is the thing that really sold me on this edition. Other than that, I hope you have a good week. Enjoy yourself.